Okay, this is part 2 of a class on writing an extended response. I'm going to jump ahead to the explain key term, and just a refresher, these are the common border studies terms used in industrial technology. So each one of these questions will lend themselves to a certain difficulty of questions, and you'll see that recognise a name identifies 1 to 2 marks. I've given the example here of name a tool commonly used in your industry, which for timber, router's a tool, graphics production software, or Photoshop would be one for multimedia. Outline is sketch in general terms, and you'll notice here the traffic light system I've been sort of using for extended responses. An outline I've made an orange level, which is worth 2 to 3 marks, and you can see where I'm reaching that point in that answer there. So this is outline advantages, and you'll notice the S is underlined. That's because it's plural, so you need 2 advantages. Okay, and you can see identifying, I might have said costs of wages, quality, consistency, or consistent quality, and that would have got me 1 to 2 marks. The 3 marks is making those links. So sketching in general terms. Describe can sort of overlap. Describe an impact would be 3 marks because it's singular. Describe issues, plural, could be a lot more. And you notice it even goes up to 6 marks in this case. Almost an extended response. But what we really want to look at is explain and discuss. So when you're looking at explaining why a company may choose to specialise their production line, we want to identify our reasons, at least describe them, and then point out why it's a benefit. Today, however, you can see how I've put together the explanation here, we're going to look at discuss, because I think discuss is the higher order question. It's the one that you really need to make sure you get full marks on. In fact, a discuss question is often one of the discriminators in the HSC exam. It's where they determine whether you're getting band 6 or not for the exam. So my answer to the explain question you saw earlier is here. And you'll notice that to get 1 to 2 marks of this explain question, I might point out all of these red points. To get 3 to 4, possibly 5, might leak between the orange and green comments, but to make sure that I've covered it completely, you'll notice there's quite a lot of green here, and that's where I've gone into an explanation about it. So this is just a way of sort of reading what I've written. Okay, have you got a question there? That's all right, you're sort of like staring in.
I didn't know it was green.
Yeah, it's hard to see in here. It is green, but it is hard to see at this point. This is the one I want to work on with you. And we're looking at discuss. When you notice the board definition to discuss, it's identify issues and provide points for and or against. So I've made this blue. As far as I'm concerned, this is going into a much higher order of questions. Our issues are impacts government legislation has on employers and employees. So there's our key points. The impacts of government legislation on employers and employees. They're the things that we need to extract from our question. You'll notice I'm highlighting this so I know what I need to cover. When I move into answering it, I've sorted it into this grid here, and I'm going to go out of the slideshow so we can actually start adding to it. So I'll quickly jump back and copy the question so that we've got a reference to it. Whoop. It's going to let me. There we go. So we need to first identify legislation. You're going to help me here. Yes?
Legislation.
WHS. Work health and safety. Yes, that's one legislation. Great. Any others?
EEO.
Yes. Equal employment opportunity. Absolutely. Anyone got some more?
Environmental practices.
Yep. We'll put EIS, but environmental impact statements or environmental requirements.
Fair trade agreement.
Yes, it could be that one as well. But we've actually probably covered all we need at this point. What I might do is I'll add those ones down the track, or you can add more yourselves to it. So you'll notice that I've now put the employer and employee. We need to make sure that we cover the question completely. So we've highlighted the government legislation. There it is there. We've highlighted that it's employers and employees. Now what we're going to fill in is that impacts. And this helps you put it together. So WHS, what are some advantages for the employer?
Work satisfaction.
The employer.
Yeah, like the employees get more work satisfaction as it's.
Yeah, you said employees though. I'm saying for the employer.
Improves productivity.
Ah, great. Because?
Safe work practices, which.
Yep, okay. What would we say, consistent productivity? Yeah? I know what you're saying. I think improve is a little harder to point out, but yes, yeah, consistent productivity. Yep, that's one.
Prevents costs like payouts, compensation.
Ah, yes, absolutely. I'm just going to change the font size so we can fit a lot more in there. Yep. What else? I'm going to get rid of this annoying little text box here while you think about the answer.
So is this going to go on in Reddit or on YouTube?
Yes, I'll show you at the end what I'll do.
Yeah.
Okay. So that question there, for the sake of the video, was will this go on to Edmodo or YouTube? All of this is going on to YouTube into the playlist. So you can access the previous one that I gave to Year 11, which is a repeat of what I gave you last year, but this will extend upon it. So we've got consistent productivity. That's an advantage. It prevents payouts and compensation costs, definitely an advantage. Any other advantages? No? Okay, well let's go for the disadvantage. Now what I might do, just so we know what we're talking about here, so I'm just putting a little A at the beginning. No, it's got to go into 2 lines, that doesn't matter. All right. Now disadvantage. We'll say time-consuming production practices. Yep.
Costly implement.
Right. Now, what you've done there is you've covered it as far as impacts, plural, advantages and disadvantages. Notice that we've got 2 of each. That would be all that's expected. How about advantages and disadvantages on employees? Great. And I'll just change that font size. All right, what's another one?
Like they feel qualified because they've had training and things like that.
Yep. Training qualifications in the area. Yep, but if anything, you could look at that as a career bonus. Absolutely. Okay, disadvantages. Yep. So it might take up some time outside work. Usually it's inside work, but who knows? What else?
Everyone has to implement the strategies for it to be effective.
Yes. They're responsible as well. They're not allowed to breach WHS guidelines, as much as an employer is not allowed to breach it. So out of that, you can sum it up if you want to, as a conclusion, just to really push it over the line, where we're talking about the costs and time on production, and you can see how that's going to impact on employers and employees. So we've essentially sort of established our paragraph for one portion. This is half the answer because it's looking for impacts. Okay, we've got impacts. We've got government legislation has on employers and employees. We probably need to make sure we cover ourselves by putting in 2. You don't need to do 3. It's good to have a list of them there if you want to work out which one you can get the most information for onto paper, but 2 would cover this question. So let's go with the EEO. We'll go with that one. That's probably stronger for employees. So, anyone got an advantage for employers?
Worker harmony.
Yep. What else? Should put a, there we go. It's another advantage for employers.
More diverse.
Diversity of, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Disadvantages?
Could require that less qualified people.
Great. And this is usually the complaint about it, is that a lot of organisations that want to try and bypass it say, but there's no one qualified who is of this cultural background or of this gender. So that's something you can debate in there. That's fine. That was a neutral statement. It's just, as far as an employer is concerned, it could be seen as a disadvantage. Any other disadvantages with it? Very similar to the one above.
There's no competitiveness in everyone's striving.
Yeah, I think we've sort of said co-worker harmony though, so we've got to be careful on contradicting ourselves in here. Yeah, I don't know about the time-consuming aspect. What I'm thinking is this area here. You can have possible breaches which will cost money. So breaching.
As in fines.
Yep. So that's sort of a disadvantage. They've got to work around it. They'll probably have to suffer loss in income by getting someone who's less qualified to ensure they don't breach it. All right, employees. Yep, which is sort of the definition. So we've got to be probably a little clearer what we're saying there. Yeah, we're probably looking for a specific word here. You're talking around it. Yeah. Okay, so for who they can't be discriminated against for just who they happen to be. You know, a person born a certain way, growing up a certain way, doesn't get a lot of choice on that. So to be discriminated against based on that isn't very nice.
So,
Yes,
can you tell us what the last word is?
which one?
Cultural, ethnic, gender.
Well, they're just all their backgrounds. So cultural background, meaning you come from a specific culture or belief system. Ethnicity would be your racial background.
No, I was just couldn't read it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. The resolution up there is not very good. I'm keeping it small to try and keep it on one page, so you'll be able to look at this down the track, but I'll read it out to you. They can't be discriminated against based on cultural, ethnic, gender, and say sexuality as well. They're all those sorts of areas. They're things that you don't choose. Age, absolutely. That would be included as well. So we'll throw that in. Oops. Doesn't really like going across the line there. Yeah, but you get the idea with that one. Okay, another advantage.
They're comfortable.
Yes.
Security stuff.
Yeah, well, secure and comfortable.
You're secure in your job.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, any disadvantages? Now, there's nothing saying that it has to include the disadvantages, but have a think about it. There might be one.
Companies can breach it.
Yeah, well, they can't breach it, can they?
More competition than getting jobs.
Yes, absolutely. More competition in gaining employment. What was your one, Laura?
I said that, like the company can breach it, so they can break. Just
Yeah,
because
or
it's-
they've got to be careful they don't breach it themselves. So that's probably that's what I thought you were getting at. That's more back to the employer though. So we've got to be careful. I see what you're saying, that a company could still breach it, but then there's a whole lot of things mechanisms if you want to support an employee in that situation. However, for them, they must abide by it. And you can imagine when you've got a bit of a cultural conflict, that's difficult. That doesn't quite fit. I'll just see if I can push it up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so what we've got here is a plan to give you a complete answer. If I listed a number of these, and I'll show you by going on and making a new slide. Oop. Our first answer might be for 1 to 2 marks. We'll list either legislation, and this will be one of the things they do in the marking centre when they mark it. They'll go, okay, for 1 to 2 marks, yes.
So in that place, send response, if it's discussed, you want us to do an introduction of
You probably find you're doing your introduction in your paragraphs as it is. You can do an introduction to list everything. Say you're sort of covering that 1 to 4 mark range at the beginning, just in the introduction. You can do that just to get that out of the way. So when a marker looks at your work, that introduction can do that for you. And I'll jump back to the explain at this point. Because what I did up there, you'll see a company may choose to specialise production line to minimise costs of materials and production, take advantages of niche markets, reduce the size of the business and improve quality of product. That's like a little introduction, isn't it? But it's only really worth, out of the 9, it could stretch possibly to 3 marks, but I think it'd be still 1 to 2. So out of 9 marks, that's all that's going to get. And it wouldn't matter how many more I added there. It's not going to go above that. And this is the key thing you've got to realise. It's when I start adding these extra features and expanding on it that I'm gaining my marks. So when I go to a marking centre and mark the exam or set up the marking criteria for the exam, we're looking at trying to get these sorts of things in the answers. Okay? So to remind you, a discuss is identify issues and provide points for and or against. And notice it says and or. So you don't have to have against. If you find that you're not getting an against, that's okay. The main point is issues, plural, points, plural. So it can't be just one. And when you look at the grid here, you notice that we're making sure we did more than one legislation, we did more than one advantage, disadvantage, advantage, disadvantage, and we're ensuring we're getting full marks there. So going back to my sample answer, so we might list relevant legislation. Oops. Let's automatically do it. There we go. Relevant legislation impacts on employers or employees. That's for 1 to 2 marks. Can you see how that happens? And that's those red identifiers I've put in there. I'm just going to quickly show you how the scales work. You'll notice that there's bands. There's your band 6 answer, band 5, 4, 3, 2. There's no such thing as a band 1. No, that seems strange, but there isn't. Band 1 means you didn't really know anything. No, you might have answered it, but nothing was right. You get 0. You attempted it, got it totally wrong. You started talking about tennis in your answer, and you've answered it, but yes, it's wrong. Okay? So for 3 to 4, we're now sort of sketching in general terms. It's like the outline aspect. So if we go back up through the slideshow, you'll see how I did an outline. So you might outline legislation, and again, it'll be relevant. Oops. Now we'll get to describe and explain, and then finally discuss. Now the explain might show some advantage or disadvantage, and you'll notice I don't say plural, or it might only do it to one piece of legislation. So these sort of discriminators occur in the marking guideline. There's your orange level, there's your green, sort of here, and you can see that we're now getting up to the 6, 7, 8 marks, and the blue is in the 9. What I want you to do, as a bit of an exercise, is answer that question. And you can answer the question based on what you have there. This is not a writing exercise to test your memory, because we've got our plan. It's an exercise in making sure that you can reach that blue level. So what I'll do last of all is just quickly color code these. Yep, orange. This will be green. Or black. And someone's been looking at that dress on Facebook. And this will be blue. And now we're going to have the debate about it. Okay, I don't really need to add this because it's repeating the question, but I'm describing legislation and possible impacts. Now, it might be of employers or employees, or it might be an impact on employers, an impact on employees. So we get these grades of not actually getting the plural covered. And that's really important that you understand that. So basing it on this, that's my exercise for you. It's not an exercise I want you to do now. It's an exercise I want you to do as something to give me between now and the exam, so I can give you feedback on how you're writing your answers. To make that work, this I'll make it a task on Edmodo, but this plan here will be through YouTube.